My name is Technical Sergeant Brandy Blaya, and I will be providing the participation points briefing to you all today. So this is an overview of everything that we're going to be going over. We're going to first be discussing the responsibilities, and this is going to be the responsibilities both at the ARPC and the unit level. We're going to be going over the law, regulation, and policies. We're going to be discussing the anniversary date, point categories, maximum point, credible for retirement, satisfactory service, credible service, and non-credible service. We're going to be discussing the PCARS printout in depth. We're also going to be discussing the common service history codes. We're going to be discussing the CMS cases that we process. We're going to be discussing the BCMR and trends. Okay, so the responsibilities that we have here at ARPC, we're responsible for building and maintaining service history points for all Guard and Reserve members. We fix points for years prior to the current year. We also manually update any distributed learning non-paid points and any points that may have been rejected in the pay system. We also integrate counterpart service points and service history. We support units and members with any anniversary, PCARS, or O4E questions that they may have. And we're also considered the subject matter experts to the AFIPS initiative and any and all promotion boards. At the unit level, you all are responsible for reviewing and updating members' points for the current anniversary year, and this also includes the 60 days following their anniversary date. One thing that we see a lot is AGR members at the unit level, their points are not always updating. If this is the case, we ask that you please reach out to ARPC PCARS via My First Console. We have a standard text with instructions on how to correct their records. We also encourage you all at the unit level to encourage the members at your unit to review their point history every month following their drills and prior to changing components. So these are our various law, regulations, and policies that govern our processes. The biggest changes to the Air Force Manual 36-2136. The Air Force Manual combined the last AFI versions 1, 2, and 3 into one AFMAN. One of the changes is to the ECI points. ECI points will now be divided by 4 instead of 3 per contact hour. So for each point that you have to do 4 hours of study hours to get 1 ECI credit point. Another change to the policies was the ANGI 36-2001 and the DODI 1215.06 and the AFI 36-2254 Volume 1. They recently increased the number of authorized AFTPs from 48 to 72. This is per FY and per member. And additionally, they also increased the authorized ATPs from 30 to 36 per FY per member. So the anniversary date. So what is the anniversary date? It's formally referred to often in the field as the R&R date, retention and retirement date. It's the foundation that we use to calculate retirement points and retirement eligibility. It's changed throughout the years, but as of 1 October 1995, currently the anniversary date is established by the date the member enters into active service or active status in a reserve component. This will also include a delayed entry, and it is only adjusted for breaks in services. So we have an anniversary training example. So basically, the anniversary date is established by the date that you enter into military service. We use the DD Form 4 as a reference. So an anniversary year begins on one day of one year and ends on the preceding day of the next year. So for example, if the initial date of enlistment was 1 July 2019, then the anniversary year would conclude on 30 June 2020. Point categories. So active duty equates to 1 point per day. IDTs in active duty for training, you receive 1 point for every 4 hours worked. It will not exceed 2 points per day. There are other IDTs where you only get 1 point per day, like an RMP. Funeral honors duty, it's credited with 1 point per day, and this can be performed in either IDT or active duty status. Distributed learning, it's often referred to as ECI. Per the DODI 1215.07, you receive 1 point for each 4 hours of distributed learning. I briefly discussed that on the last slide. And for membership points, you receive 15 points credited for active reserve status membership per anniversary year, and it can be prorated for partial years. Maximum points credible for retirement. So this slide is for everything other than the active duty column on the PCARS serve. The maximum inactive duty credit applies to a combination of IDTs, plus any distributed learning, plus any membership points. So it's changed throughout the years as to how much maximum points you can get in an anniversary year, but currently, and as of 30 October 2017, it's 130. So there's a effective 30 October 2007, it's 130 max. So a maximum of 365 points, or if it's a leap year, 366, may be credited for each anniversary year. Distributed learning references, the regulation that we refer to is the DODI 1215.07. So 1 retirement point for each 4 hours of distributed learning. Any distributed learning inquiries need to be submitted via MyPers console, and you'll need to include any applicable documentation to the incident for the ARPC PCARS technicians to complete the audit. So when completing a distributed learning via ADLS, members must register for the courses through their Servicing Force Support Squadron or equivalent in order to receive point credit. Members are not authorized to register for distributed learning with other service schools. Those who register for developmental courses directly with other service schools will not receive points for any completed courses. Members are only authorized to complete other service developmental education after completing the comparable level of the Air Force distributed learning first. Satisfactory Service. So a year of satisfactory federal service for retirement is awarded when a member earns at least 50 points, including any membership points, for the entire anniversary year. You have to actually complete the entire calendar year, so if you separate a day before, you won't get a satisfactory year, even though you have the max points for the year. A partial year of satisfactory federal service for retirement is awarded when a member earns a minimum number of required points during a partial anniversary year, and this only applies when a member ends their active commitment prior to their anniversary date. So the next 2 slides that I'll be going over, the first slide is the number of points needed for a good partial year. So for instance, I know it's kind of small, but if you work, the very first line is highlighting if you work from 0 to 8 days in an active duty status, you'll need at least 1 point in order to have a good year. For partial years, we always suggest that you follow up with the retirement department with any questions and concerns just to be sure. So the second chart highlights the prorated membership points for partial years. So members need to have worked at least 13 days in an active duty status in order to receive 1 membership point for a partial year, and it's so on and so forth, as you can see. Credible service. So this is a list of all credible service components. Basically, any points that are earned in any one of these statuses or categories would be included in your PCARS serve. So this is a list of all non-credible service categories, and any time spent in any one of these categories, no points will be earned for any time spent. One of the non-credible service that I want to highlight is the retired reserve, because we get a lot of questions regarding this one. So this is basically the period of time following your retirement, and you have your 20 SAT years, but you're put into a retired reserve status, which pretty much means that you can be recalled. During this time, you're not considered a civilian, but you're also not required to participate. It's basically a gray area between retiring and up until you get paid at age 60. There's a special passcode that you're put in during this time. So this is a PCARS computer printout. I'm sure you've all have seen this. We're going to be going over each important line item. The first one is the anniversary date. It's recorded in month date format. So to the right of that, the record status code at the top. When looking at the record status section, you want to see either a 47 or a 44. If you see anything else, something is wrong and needs to be corrected. There could be various reasons depending on what the specific code is. However, what we ask is if you need assistance with this, that you submit a MyPers console incident to ARPC PCARS, and we can assist you with correcting the member's record. The TAFMs right below that is your total active federal military service. Your TAFMs will be displayed in year, month, day format. This basically highlights the total number of days spent in an active duty status throughout your career. Below that is your retirement points. So earlier in a previous slide, I discussed max points. So whenever a member receives points over the 130 max, you'll see a difference between the total and the retirement columns. So in this example, the total column has more points than the retirement column because at some point during one of the member's anniversary years, the maximum amount of points were received. So everything after the 130 maximum will not count towards their retirement points. This could be due to an IDT cap or a max year cap, or if you're an AGR on 365-day orders and you complete ECI, the ECI points will not count towards your anniversary year. So just below that is the Satisfactory Service highlights, the Satisfactory Service. This highlights the number of years of satisfactory service a member has completed throughout their entire military career. The service component codes right below will be discussed on the next slide, so I won't get too much into that one quite yet. The current year point categories, so if you can see towards the bottom of it, they're broken out by the type duty code. So 1 through 5 is active duty that the member would have performed. 6 is IDT, an AFTP. 7 is a paid IDT, and 8 is a non-paid IDT. If you see any points with the type duty code 9, that's distributed learning. And to the left of that, the year-by-year service history, it basically separates all of your service history by anniversary years. So the common service history status codes I briefly discussed on the next page, but I didn't want to get too much into it until you've seen this the status code sheet. So it's primarily important for the ARPC PCARS technicians to know. However, this could be a bit of good information to have at the unit level. So basically, these are the various codes that you will see in the history status column on the PCARS computer printout, and it's self-explanatory. So depending on the component that they're in, there's various codes as to whether or not they're active duty or a reserve or guardsman in that component, and so on and so forth. And then you can also see that the non-credible service is also broken out as well. XC is the civilian breaks, XT would be any time spent in the ROTC, and XA would be any time spent at the Air Force Academy. So the case management systems, the first one that we're going to go over is the over for enlisted qualifications. These are often referred to as OXC in the field. They're actually referred to as over for enlisted, and it's basically the qualifications for this is you have to be an officer 01 through 03, and you have to have had accrued at least 1,461 retirement points as a warrant officer or an enlisted member prior to your commission date. So for instance, if you commissioned on 1 October, you would need to have 1,461 points by 30 September. Eligible points include active duty for training, and IDT for at least 4 years and 1 day to satisfy the over 4 years of service requirement. The over 4E pay and point adjustment process is as follows. Your unit would submit a CMS case on your behalf, on the member's behalf, and they would refer it to DFAS RC Indianapolis. They would attach an oath of office, which is the Air Force Form 133, and a GR Bold Surf, which is a MIL PDS product that I'm sure you all are familiar with. The case, after DFAS receives it, is then referred to ARPC 04E for further action. Once we receive the cases at our level, we verify that the member did in fact accrue the necessary retirement points prior to their commission date, and if so, we update the 04E flag in MIL PDS. And then what we do is we refer the case back to DFAS, and then they actually adjust the member's pay record to receive the 04E going forward. So the other CMS cases that we work with are the AFTP CMS cases. So we ask that these CMS cases are only submitted when the members have already exhausted their initial 48. This is in regards to the regulations that recently increased the number of authorized AFTPs from 48 to 72 per FY per member. So once ARPC PCARS receives the CMS case, we ask that the unit had attached a DD Form 114, which is the military pay order, and we also ask that when filling these out, we ask that you please list each date and each period or periods that need to be manually updated on the DD Form 114. That way, when we receive it, we can manually update the points accordingly. So the AFTP pay and point adjustment process is as follows. The members unit would initiate the CMS case to DFAS with the applicable documentation. DFAS refers it to ARPC PCARS, or excuse me, ARPC 04, excuse me, the correct Q is ARPC PCARS, sorry. And once we receive it, we review for the point verification, and then we manually update the points, and then we refer it back to the point of origin, and they do the final case close actions. So these are some of the common CMS case issues. So oftentimes we'll receive CMS cases where they weren't initially routed through DFAS. So I just want to make sure that I foot stomp that all pay affecting CMS cases need to route through DFAS first prior to being submitted to ARPC PCARS or ARPC 04E. And this really can, by doing this, it can avoid any unnecessary delays, because what happens is when we receive CMS cases at our level that weren't originally referred to DFAS, we have to refer them back to the point of origin, and that really does cause unnecessary delays on getting the members' records updated correctly in a timely manner. And so we ask that you please route all pay-affecting CMS cases to DFAS originally. Another common issue that we see is that we receive a lot of miscellaneous pay and point adjustment cases, and a lot of the times they're speaking, finance lingo, and a lot of the times we don't understand exactly what needs to be done. So we just ask that you are very specific as to what actions ARPC PCARS needs to take within the actions and comments section. That way we don't have to refer the cases back to the point of origin or to DFAS asking for clarification. Also, a lot of the times we see CMS cases that are referred to us that don't have the required source documentation added, or it's not filled out correctly, it's not digitally signed, or it could be submitted for a completely different person than what the CMS case is for. So we just ask that you pay attention to that as well. So the Board for Correction of Military Records, this process, prior to submitting a BCMR, we ask that you first exhaust all other remedies first. Oftentimes, errors can be corrected administratively. If you have any questions, we ask that you contact Headquarters ARPC Points Management via MIPERS before submitting a BCMR, and then we can oftentimes provide a solution to whatever the problem is before a BCMR is initiated. I just want to reiterate that a BCMR is a last resort. And once a BCMR is initiated, ARPC PCARS is unable to assist further until the BCMR is resolved. So the last, the only trend or topic that I have not discussed is the very last one, the new AFMAN 362136. It's regarding non-paid points. So non-paid points must be processed in UTAPs or by the Member Servicing Personnel Office within MIL-PDS no later than 2 months after the member's anniversary closeout in order to be credited for satisfactory service. However, if you submit a MIPERS incident, as long as the MIPERS incident was submitted prior to the member's anniversary closeout, ARPC Points Management will update accordingly. Another trend and topic that we just want to foot stomp on is to please provide your members a copy of their final point summaries prior to retiring or separating, and make sure that they know that they should really keep these documents for life, really. We ask also that you do not call or email ARPC Points Management technicians directly. Instead, we ask that you submit a MIPERS incident for additional assistance, and please ensure that the member or the unit includes a good contact phone number in the event that we have to reach out directly. So what you see in the parentheses, this is actually an email reminder that goes out 120 days prior to your anniversary date. This message will not go out to people on active duty orders. So we just ask that you please let your folks know if they are not on active duty orders and if they are not receiving this reminder. they may want to just check with their servicing personnel office and verify that the email address that is in Mail PDS is correct. That way they can get the record check reminder. We try to emphasize this as much as possible because, you know, when members don't check their points, they're not, you know, they're not getting the credit for the duty that they've performed.
So first question is from Chief Kuma, and the question is, can you go over the bullet points on the anniversary year calculation for individuals who come from active duty?
Like the partial year for active duty and the partial year.
Like the partial year for active duty and reserve?
Chief Kuma, if you're on the line, feel free to elaborate on your question for Sergeant Blair.
And they can't see it, that might be what they're asking.
Say again.
You know, the E15 you put in,
Mhm.
they might be trying to understand how they go from regular to reserve, and they don't see the points until.
If Chief Kuma is not there, I can move on to the second question and we can come back. So the second question is from Tech Sergeant Walsh. We have seen YV, that is Yankee Victor, on the point summary. Can you define this code for us?
Can you repeat that, please?
The YV, they've seen YV,
Yes.
Yankee Victor, on the point
That's
summary.
code.
Can you define that code?
Yes, that's an old code for unverified time, the YV.
That's 80s and 90s.
That's like
Okay.
from the
Thank you.
1980s and the early 90s. That's an old code.
Okay, thank you. And then from Master Sergeant Swint, how are the 15 membership points prorated for partial years? What is the calculation for that?
Please stand by. I'm going to grab the documentation. 1 second, please.
Here, so when they look at it.
Okay, so I have that on slide, I believe that was slide 13. So it's kind of self-explanatory. When you look at the table, so if, say for instance, I mentioned that you have to work at least 13 days in an active duty status in order to receive 1 membership point. So the table is very self-explanatory. So if you work 13 through 36 days, you'll get 1 membership points, and if you work 37 through 60, you'll get 2, and so on and so forth. So it's very self-explanatory. So if you reference the DODI 1215.07, table 2, that's actually the table that lists the prorated membership points. Next question, please.
Okay, what section in DFAS would a PCARS correction need to go to for a CMS case?
It depends on the type of CMS case that they're submitting. So let me refer back to the CMS slides. That way I don't misquote any misinformation. But for the 04E CMS cases, they are to be submitted to DFAS RC Indianapolis. And for the AFTP pay point adjustments, they would also need to go to DFAS RC Indianapolis. And then once they're forwarded to DFAS, they'll forward it to our inbox, and we'll work it from there. Next question, please.
Thank you. And then we'll come back to Chief Kuma, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name, Chief. Back to that first question about going over bullet points on the anniversary year calculation for individuals who come from active duty. We have, if you're on the line, Chief, feel free to continue your question.
Hey, yeah, this is Chief Kuma. It was on this slide, but you only covered the first 2 bullet points, and then you switched to the next slide, but you had a information about those who come from active duty and their anniversary date.
Did you have a specific question, Chief? I'm trying to refer back to that slide so I could maybe pick up where I left off.
I was trying to capture the information on this slide and then figure out if I have a question or whether it was self-explanatory on your slide.
Okay, so I'm looking at the anniversary slide now. Did you want to follow up offline and discuss it further?
Yes, let's do that.
Okay.
Okay,
And how do you
thank
spell
you.
your last name, Chief?
It's Kouma.
And you're, okay, thank you.
Okay,
I'll follow up with you as soon as I'm done, okay, ma'am?
all right, moving on to a question from Master Sergeant Scott at the 105th.
No, but I can find it in the global.
Okay.
I'm sorry about that if I muted myself. Is SEJ PME 1 and 2 still receiving 13 retirement points upon completion and submission to ARPC?
I do not think so, but we have to verify.
I do not think so, but I'm going to have to verify. So if the member wants to email, or excuse me, submit a MyPers ticket to ARPC PCARS, we can definitely look into that.
Okay, and then moving on to a question from Staff Sergeant Vandegrift. Can a member get a good year if they switch different components and do not take a break? How would you determine they got a good year from switching components? I know the lines are all broken down to match each component.
Ma'am, Miss Nanina Baldwin is going to answer that question.
Okay. What happens is when you leave one branch and go to another, it becomes two partial years. As long as you have 50 points between the two, the membership points are broken up depending on, 3 or 12 or 7 or 8, depending on how long the partial years are. So you still get your 15 points. You just need to make sure you have 35. If you don't have 50 points, you do not get a good year when you transfer over. Does that make sense?
Sergeant Vandegrift, if you are on the line, you are welcome to have a dialogue. Okay, we will just move on to the next question and loop around to anybody who we missed. From Tech Sergeant Peterson at the 176th, is there anything in the works to deal with the glitch in points for AGR members when they complete CDCs or PME testing? Active duty points automatically get written over by the ECI points.
You know what she means, right?
No.
Okay, so you're 365 and every month your points, but if you complete ECI
Mhm.
in that month, it kicks out the active duty points and
Oh,
only
yes,
allows
yes,
those.
yes.
That's been made aware, but we're working with AFPOA on that.
So what I'm being told is that we're aware of the issue and AFPOA is aware and we're working with them, but as of right now, there's no course of action that we know of that is, has rectified that issue.
Or end date. Just send in your orders and
I mean, you can submit a MyPers incident with your orders and we can update manually if need be until there is a solution.
Okay, hopefully that answered that. And moving on to Tech Sergeant Lasher from the 124th. They have a member going through NDES and has 14 years, 11 months, 27 days. How many days does he need to work so he can cross over into the 15-year SAT service?
We'd have to look at the member. We would have to have the member social and the name to look at it to see what the R&R date is and when that's ending. Because what happens is some people have the break and they end up with 14 years, 11 months, and so many days, and their next R&R year starts up, but it won't reflect that period of time into the next year, even if they do have the amount of time in the next month. Does that make sense? Because it's part of current points.
Okay, Sergeant Lasher said that makes sense. And I don't have any other questions. If I missed anybody at this point in time, feel free to raise your hand. There's a raise hand function right between chat and the three dots so that we can call on you, answer your question. Otherwise, you are more than welcome to submit MyPERS tickets.
With source documentation, please.
Sergeant Blea, this is Mark. Did you see the other question about requesting the number of the DODI you referred to?
I did not see that question. What is the question?
It's as the question said, let me check it again. Hold on. It said, could you please refer to us, give us the number of the DODI you referred to? I'm not certain what page it was on.
It's probably the DODI 1215.07. I know I referred to that one a couple of times throughout the briefing.
Okay, and that question came from Senior Master Sergeant Denny, so if you are on the line and I see you have raised your hand, feel free to expound on that. Ma'am?
Yes, ma'am. That was the reference that I was pointing to, and I thought it was pretty cool. As soon as I asked that question, the slide slipped back over to the trends and topics, and it was the first one up there. So I've made notes so that I can make sure we talk about that at my base.
Okay.
Thank you much, ma'am.
You're welcome.